You see obviously the tax relief, so the money that kind of the tax income you get from the tax man, and then also from your employer. So you'll obviously see that the pension's growing quite massively there. So that's year 1. Year 5, similar. We can start to see the red going up, the kind of interest reward, and again the pension. So obviously £100 a month for 5 years. If you're at home, you've got £6,000. Then you're going, 6,100. For some of your savings accounts. Stocks and shares, you've got almost £7,000. Pension, you've got about £13,500. Interesting. And over 30 years. And there we go. So again, we start to see that actually over a long period of time there becomes a very big difference. So saving at home, you've got 36 grand. Standard savings account, you've got 40 grand. Cash ISA, you've got 43 grand. But in stocks and shares, you might have 95 grand. And pension, you might have 160 grand. So obviously, with that slide in particular, actually then comes, you can bring out a lot of learning. So we can start to, obviously to be thinking about, pros and cons around some of these kind of financial options. So I guess specifically, obviously, you might be talking about different types of savings accounts, ISAs. We'll just clarify what an ISA is. But I guess the two obviously very interesting ones in terms of, people, you might imagine that the young people are interested in growing their money. One is about stocks and shares, so in terms of investments, and then the other is about pensions. So in terms of stocks and shares, I think what are we going to cover around that? Well, certainly let's cover, let's make sure everyone's got a very basic understanding of what does an investment mean in terms of, putting your money into such as a company or property or other types of, financial assets or different kind of things like gold or antiques, different types of investments you can make. And I guess kind of coming on from that is, well, what are you doing? Okay, so there's obviously the risk versus reward, I guess kind of scale kind of element coming in there. So there's certainly something there about kind of explaining really the kind of the definition, the heart of where investments are at. Maybe even bringing out a little bit about, you have to decide as an individual what type of person you are. Are you a person who's happy to take an element of risk, or you're a bit risk averse? And I think that's something you could bring out, and also bring out the element that investments are something that people do over a long period of time. You don't invest your money in stocks and shares for a week or two. It's typically something that people do over years and years, and then obviously start to hopefully potentially see the benefits of that. So something there, certainly around stocks and shares, and bringing out the risk element to it. And obviously then we've got about pensions, and obviously, again, I'll just bring up the graph quickly. You can obviously see, pensions is massive. In comparison to saving at home, 36 grand, pensions, 160 grand. So there's obviously a huge difference there. So with pensions, obviously you may well have covered it in section 1, but what we really want to do is, I guess, almost demystify pensions a little bit as a long-term saving option, and think, well, there obviously it's a common word, pension, but actually, what are the really good things about it, and are there things not so good about it? Because essentially, it's a long-term saving option for people. So let's just kind of clarify a little bit about how it works. So I've written up a couple of pros and cons, I guess, about pensions, which are interesting just to kind of bring out. So obviously on the positive side, it should be fairly obvious. You are saving for your long term. You have got some long term security there. Obviously tax efficient. So obviously with a private pension, your tax, your money you're putting into the pension isn't going to get taxed, so it's tax efficient in that way. Your employer contributes. Okay, so that's pretty good. You kind of double up on your money. And obviously, over time, even though there is this element of risk, your money's getting invested in the stock market, typically rates would suggest that you're going to get a better rate of return than your average savings accounts. Okay, so quite a lot of benefits there. Things which maybe aren't so good about pensions. I think it's interesting just to kind of bring out about this. One is obviously you can't access it, for a long term. You obviously can't access it until retirement age. And so if you're talking to people about long-term savings options, there's interesting discussion points around that. Around, well, what happens when you're 30 and you want to buy a house, but your money's locked up in a pension? You can't do that. So that's certainly one point. Obviously, it's tax-free when it goes in, but then it's taxable when it comes out. So, if you're a pensioner, your personal allowance, but it's typically slightly bigger than your average kind of 9,440. But essentially, you can still be taxed on your pension if it's above the personal allowance. So, okay, there's some pros and cons around that. I mean, obviously, you're likely to get a better rate of return with your money being invested in a pension than in a savings account. But obviously, on obviously the negative side of that is, you are subject to volatility on the stock market, and so your money can go up as well as down. You might invest your money in a pension, and depending on when you retire, there's the option it could do very well, or if there's just been a big crash, then maybe you haven't done so well. So obviously there's volatility there. And certainly for the higher ability students, and I think that we certainly do reach plenty of these kind of calibre of students in terms of content they can handle. We can be talking about annuities. So I guess let's just clarify. So you get to the end of your working life. You've got your private pension pot. Essentially, with the vast majority of that money, you have to buy an annuity. It's obviously it's basically obviously a financial product that's going to guarantee you a set income for life. So you have £100,000 in your pension, and you go to a financial service provider and you say, right, I've got £100,000, I want to buy an annuity, and they say, right, with your £100,000 we'll give you an annual amount of £5,000 a year. And that's something that basically everyone has to do with their private pension pot. So there are pros and cons around that. You might think, oh, that's a good thing because I can't just blow my 100 grand. I'm guaranteed my income for life. That's a pretty good thing. But of course, the other element there is, you don't have choice. Essentially, you have to do this with your money. And also, then to a certain extent, you're at the volatility of the annuity market. If annuity rates are good, then you'll get more per year for life. If annuity rates aren't so good, which actually they aren't at the moment, you're not going to do so well. So actually, as an example, the example I gave is actually a fairly accurate kind of figure. So 100 grand a year, an annuity provider would probably give you about 5 grand a year for life. And obviously what the annuity provider is trying to do is they're weighing up how long you're going to live. So if you live longer than they think, you've won the game, and if you die sooner than you think, then essentially they've won. So I guess as a whole with pensions, what we're trying to do is not to kind of put people off pensions by any means, because they are a really important way that people save. Certainly going back to the content we covered in section 1 around auto enrolment, majority of people in the UK are now going to do it. This is one of the new big things in the UK. Financial world and how it affects individuals. So we're definitely not putting people off pensions. I don't want to make that really clear. We're not putting people off pensions by any means. I guess what we're trying to do in this kind of activity about kind of projections and where you can put your money is to bring out just some of the learning. Well, what is an investment? Actually, how does it work? What are the pros and cons? And then, as we've just done with pensions, what is a pension? How does it work? What are the pros and cons? So you don't necessarily every time have to be writing up, the pros and cons on a board around this. But I think, I want, everyone as a trainer to be bringing these concepts out, to be actually highlighting to people, what are the kind of the facts behind the kind of figures and the concepts that you hear. So kind of having done that, as I say, we had our 30-year graph. We want to try and help students understand, I guess, almost the next level of detail, because this obviously has you put in £100 a month, you put that aside, and over a lifetime you'll have 36 grand at home, for example, sitting at home, ready for you to spend. Okay, so that's a fact. However, of course, taking that to the next level of content, the 36 grand that you have over 30 years isn't going to buy you 36 grand's worth of stuff that you might be able to buy today. So obviously we have inflation, which will essentially erode the value of that money. So what we've done is The graphs which we've had up until this point are sort of the nominal returns, the kind of theoretical returns, as it were. What we've done is added one additional graph which also shows the real returns. So based on a kind of an average of inflation of 3% over this kind of time period, actually what is that money going to buy you? So the final graph then, which looks like this, is saying, well look, this was your 36 grand as a kind of nominal return, theoretical. Now let's look at it in comparison to all the others. Okay, so this actually then starts to show us that, you know, if you decide just to save your money at home, actually the 36 grand you've put aside will only actually, you know, in 30 years time only buy you £23,000 worth of goods in today's value. Okay, and then similarly with then cash ISA, stocks and shares ISA, investment ISA and pension, you can start to see that actually a couple of things. One is that the money won't buy you obviously as much as it would do kind of theoretically if you had it all today. But also of course actually if you want to even like maintain the value of your money, you actually, you know, that's where, you know, I guess that one of the benefits of investments really come in. So if you see the black line that goes across from your nominal returns right down the left hand side across, you'll notice that even in a cash ISA, essentially the 36 grand that you put aside in real terms would only equal 28 grand over a 30-year period. So it's only really when you start to get into the investments and the pensions that actually your money is really holding, actually increasing its value in real